Welcome back to Talk Tickers. You ready for this? Today we are going to do a deep dive into Teva Pharmaceutical Industries' latest earnings call.
Yeah, it is quite a wild ride.
There's a lot to unpack for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got 8 straight quarters of growth and ambitious goals.
Mm-hmm.
Some really groundbreaking drugs in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And a lot more. So let's just jump right into it.
Okay, so for our listeners who maybe haven't been following Teva that closely,
Right.
they are a global pharmaceutical company. They're known for both generic and innovative medicines.
Yeah, exactly. Think your everyday prescriptions
Yep.
and those cutting-edge treatments
Uh-huh.
all in one company. And they've really been working on turning their business around. And these latest earnings are kind of a peek into how that's playing out.
So let's start with the big news. They reported their 8th straight quarter of growth.
Wow.
This is a huge deal after years of trying to kind of get things back on track. They hit $16.5 billion in revenue.
Yeah, a 9% jump.
Wow.
Which is impressive in and of itself, but what's even more impressive
Yeah.
is it wasn't just in one area, right? It was across all their business segments. Innovative medicines, generics, and even their API business.
API, for anyone who's scratching their head right now.
Yeah.
That stands for active pharmaceutical ingredient. So that's basically the raw material.
Right, the stuff that makes the medicine work.
That makes the medicine work exactly.
Yeah.
So even that ingredient supply business is doing well.
Exactly. And, it's not just revenue that's looking good.
Right.
If we look at the financials, their adjusted EBITDA, which is essentially you can think of as their operating profitability,
Okay.
climbed by 9% as well
Uh-huh.
to $4.8 billion.
Some more money coming in.
Yes,
And they're keeping more of it. What's not to like?
exactly. And earnings per share also up 10% to $2.49. And then you cannot forget free cash flow, another 10% increase landing at $2.1 billion.
So it's safe to say they're on track to meet that target of a 5% compound annual growth rate.
Yeah, by 2027,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Okay, so before we go any further, we're throwing around all these terms. EBITDA, compound annual growth rate.
right.
For people who aren't, financial experts, can you break down what those actually mean?
Sure. So EBITDA, I always say this, it kind of helps us see how much cash a company is generating from its operations.
Uh-huh.
You're kind of stripping away things like interest and taxes to give us a cleaner picture of core profitability.
So it's kind of like peeking behind the curtain
Exactly.
of what the business is actually making.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Now, the 5% compound annual growth rate, or key GR as it's commonly called, that's essentially their goal for how much they want their revenue to grow
Mm-hmm.
on average each year until 2027. To put that into perspective, the average growth rate for the entire pharmaceutical industry is more like 3%.
Okay.
So they're aiming to outperform the market.
That's ambitious.
It is, yeah.
So let's get to the exciting stuff. What is actually driving all this growth?
Right.
What are their big products? What are the things that are really performing well?
So their star performer, Austedo,
Uh-huh.
which is a drug used to treat movement disorders,
Mm-hmm.
brought in almost $1.7 billion in revenue this past year.
That's a 36% increase.
Yeah, that's pretty massive.
Yeah. But is that growth sustainable?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
So while there's always going to be competition in this industry,
Of course.
Teva is confident that Austedo will hit $2.5 billion
Wow.
in sales by 2027. And here's the real kicker. They're saying that's not even the peak they see for this drug.
Wow. Okay, so Austedo is one to watch for sure.
Absolutely.
What else is doing well for them?
They also got UZEDY,
Uh-huh.
which is a newer treatment for a rare genetic disease.
Okay.
And this one actually blew past its $100 million sales target for the year,
Wow.
hitting $117 million.
Okay.
And they are projecting $160 million in sales for 2025.
That's pretty good for a drug that's just kind of getting started.
Yeah, especially for a specialized treatment, right?
Right.
This isn't a mass market drug.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So those numbers are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Now, we also can't forget about their migraine medication, Ajovy.
Yes.
How is that one doing?
So it's holding its own in a market that's really packed with competitors,
Uh-huh.
growing 18% to just over $500 million.
Okay.
And their forecast for 2025 is $600 million.
So it sounds like that one's on a pretty solid path, too.
Absolutely.
So it's really interesting how they're kind of using both these innovative medicines, but also their more traditional generics business
Right.
to kind of achieve this growth. But let's talk about their pipeline. I'm hearing a lot of buzz about a drug called Duvakitug.
Duvakitug, yes.
What is that all about?
So this one has a lot of people talking. It targets a protein called TL1A,
Okay.
which is involved in inflammatory diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually just late last year released really positive phase 2 trial results
Mm-hmm.
for both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease.
I remember seeing those headlines, but what makes Duvakitug so special?
Right.
I mean, there are lots of drugs out there for inflammatory conditions.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The potential for this drug goes way beyond just those initial diseases.
Really?
Yeah, because TL1A is involved in so many different inflammatory processes.
Uh-huh.
This one drug could be developed to treat a whole bunch of conditions.
So we're talking like, everything from like a rash to something more serious like.
Yeah.
What kind of examples are we talking?
So we're talking conditions ranging from idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis,
Mm-hmm.
which is a type of lung scarring, to a whole host of other gastrointestinal diseases. It's almost like having like a portfolio of potential treatments
Wow.
packed into one molecule.
Okay, so Duvakitug is a potential blockbuster. But what else is in the pipeline? I mean, they can't just be betting on this one drug.
Right. So they also have DRI, which stands for Dual Action Rescue Inhaler.
Okay.
It's a new type of inhaler for asthma. Uh-huh.
That combines a fast-acting reliever with a steroid to really target that inflammation.
So it's like a 1-2 punch for asthma.
Yeah, potentially a game changer.
Yeah. That sounds like you'd really help a lot of people.
Right, and millions of people rely on these single-agent relievers,
Yeah.
even though guidelines recommend this dual-action approach.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that DRI is designed to be super user-friendly,
Okay.
especially for children and adults who, have a tough time with traditional inhalers.
It's interesting how sometimes it's not even just about the medicine itself,
Right,
but how it's delivered. It
absolutely.
makes a huge difference for patients.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
they also have olanzapine LAI. So that stands for long-acting injectable.
Okay.
And this is a long-acting version of an existing antipsychotic
Uh-huh.
that's given as an injection
Okay.
for schizophrenia.
Mhm.
And the whole idea here is to improve patient adherence, which can be a big challenge.
Yeah, for sure. With this condition. And, better adherence generally means better management of the symptoms.
So it sounds like they're not just betting on one thing.
Right.
They're really covering a lot of different areas
Exactly.
and really innovating, not just, kind of resting on the generics.
Absolutely.
But speaking of the generics,
Yes.
those are their bread and butter.
Right.
That's kind of the foundation of a lot of what they do. So how is that business doing?
Yeah, so that generics business is actually back on track with growth across all regions for the second year in a row.
Wow. That's really good to hear because I remember when there were concerns about, pricing pressures and competition.
Right. It was a rough patch, but they seem to have really weathered the storm.
Good for them. Now, let's talk about biosimilars for a second.
Yes.
I know they've been building up this big portfolio.
Yeah, 18 different assets.
For those who are not familiar with biosimilars, can you just give us a quick overview?
Yeah, so biosimilars are essentially generic versions of these complex and often quite expensive biologic drugs.
Okay.
And they're becoming super important in today's healthcare landscape. The whole goal is to provide more affordable treatment options.
Okay.
And Teva actually plans to launch 7 new biosimilars in the U.S.
Wow.
and 4 in Europe between now and 2027.
Okay, so it sounds like they're really trying to become a major player in that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all this growth
Right.
and all this innovation requires a lot of money.
It does, yes.
How is their financial health looking?
Yeah, so they're in a much better shape
Okay.
than they were a few years ago, and they're really committed to reducing their debt, which currently sits at $14.5 billion.
And how are they managing that debt?
So they're really focused on improving a key financial metric called their net debt to EBITDA ratio.
Okay, that's one of those terms.
Yeah.
That probably a lot of people are like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know what that means.
So think of it like your personal debt to income ratio.
Okay.
It basically shows how much debt you have compared to how much money you're bringing in,
Uh-huh.
right? And a lower ratio generally means you're in a better position to pay off your debts.
Right. Makes sense.
Exactly. So Teva is currently at 3x,
Okay.
which is considered healthy,
Uh-huh.
and they're aiming for 2x by 2027. So they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I also remember hearing some good news about their credit rating.
Yes. So all three major credit rating agencies
Uh-huh.
have actually upgraded their outlook for Teva
Wow.
in recent months.
It's a big deal, right?
Yeah, it's a huge vote of confidence from the markets.
Yeah.
They're on track to achieve an investment grade rating.
Which basically means that they're, less risky.
Right.
Okay, so they're growing, their pipeline looks promising,
Mm-hmm.
their financials are improving.
Sure.
What's the outlook for 2025?
So they're projecting revenue growth between 2 to 5%, reaching $16.8 billion to $17.4 billion. They're expecting continued strength from those key drugs we discussed.
Uh-huh.
Austedo, Ajovy, and UZEY. Along with that kind of steady growth in their generics business.
So still growing, but at a bit of a slower pace.
Slightly more moderate, yeah.
Which makes sense. They're investing a lot,
Right.
launching new products.
Yeah.
But that also means they're facing this balancing act of,
Except-
fueling growth,
Right.
but also staying profitable.
Yeah.
How are they thinking about that?
So they're juggling the need to invest heavily in that pipeline,
Right.
which includes those potentially expensive clinical trials for Duvakitug, those expanded uses.
Right.
But they also need to hit profitability in 2025.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a tricky situation.
And then the big elephant in the room, I think, for the entire industry
Yes.
right now is this Inflation Reduction Act.
The IRA.
Yes.
How is that going to impact Teva? What do they say?
Yeah, it's definitely adding another layer of complexity
Yeah.
to their forecasting.
Right.
The IRA is going to impact some of their key products,
Mm-hmm.
including UZEDY and Austedo.
So that's a potential headwind, but I'm curious, is there any kind of potential upside?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay.
You have to remember that the IRA is all about making drugs more affordable, right?
Right.
So that could actually create opportunities for Teva,
Okay.
especially in their biosimilars business.
Because if people are looking for cheaper alternatives,
Right.
they could be in a good position to benefit from that.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot already. It sounds like Teva is on a good path, but there are definitely some challenges ahead.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dig into some more of the specifics from the earnings call.
Sounds good. Welcome back to Talk Tickers. Before the break, we kind of talked about some of the high-level takeaways from Teva's latest earnings call.
Yep.
But now I kind of want to zoom in a little bit.
And maybe dissect some of the finer points that caught my attention.
Sounds good. What stood out to you?
Well, one thing that really kind of jumped out at me was their emphasis on boosting efficiency in their generics business.
Okay.
So they've really been working on streamlining their supply chain and improving their launch capabilities, to make sure they can deliver those products quickly
Right.
and at a competitive price.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a smooth supply chain is absolutely crucial
Right.
in the world of generics where those margins are so thin.
Exactly. Any little hiccups can really impact the bottom line.
Yeah, for sure.
And they also highlighted some initiatives to reduce their cost of goods sold,
Okay.
which, is another crucial factor in maintaining profitability
Right.
in such a competitive space.
Yeah. It's all about efficiency. Now, they also touched upon their biosimilars business,
Yes.
which seems to be a growing part of their strategy.
Right.
What were your thoughts on that?
I was really impressed, actually, by the breadth of their biosimilars portfolio.
Okay.
I mean, they have 18 assets,
Uh-huh.
and they're not just, sitting on them. They are aggressively launching these products
Right.
in key markets like the U.S. and Europe.
Yeah, that's a really important point because having a diverse portfolio is great, but it's all about execution.
Right.
They got to be able to capitalize on those launches to really reap the rewards.
Absolutely. And they seem to have a well-defined strategy for doing just that. They're not just throwing products out there.
Yeah.
They're being very deliberate about, their launch timing
Mm-hmm.
and their market selection.
Now let's talk about their financial health. That's been, a topic that's been front and center
Right.
for Teva over the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
They keep reiterating this commitment to deleveraging, but what does their debt picture look like right now at the end of 2024?
So they ended the year with a net debt of $14.5 billion. And their net debt to EBITDA ratio was approximately 3x,
Okay.
which is, a significant improvement from where they were a couple of years ago.
So progress is being made.
Progress is definitely being made.
But how about their credit rating?
Yeah.
That's always a good indicator of a company's financial health.
So this is where it gets pretty interesting.
Okay.
All three major credit rating agencies, so Standard & Poor's,
Yeah.
Moody's, and Fitch
Hmm.
have all upgraded their outlook for Teva
Wow.
in recent months.
Okay.
They're now on track to achieve an investment grade rating.
Which is huge.
Which is huge, yeah.
I mean, that's a real sign
Yeah.
of stability, and that could also...
Right, and lower their borrowing costs, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. It can have this ripple effect.
Exactly.
Okay. So, painting a pretty positive picture here.
Yeah.
Strong growth, a good pipeline, improving financial health.
Right.
But as we all know, no company operates in a vacuum, right?
Right. Of course. Of course.
There are always external forces at play.
Right.
What were some of the challenges or headwinds that Teva addressed during this earnings call?
So the Inflation Reduction Act
Yeah?
is definitely one of the most significant challenges that they're facing.
Right. And we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of dig a little deeper into how they plan to navigate this.
Right.
I mean, it's a complex piece of legislation.
It is, and there's still a lot of uncertainty,
Exactly.
surrounding its long-term implications.
So what do they say?
Yeah, so they didn't really go into granular detail on this call,
Okay.
which is understandable, I think.
Yeah.
The IRA is still relatively new.
Right.
They're likely still kind of assessing the full impact.
But they're definitely aware of it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, their legal teams are probably
Oh, I'm sure.
working overtime to try to figure out how to
Right. Yeah.
make the best of it.
Yeah, it's going to reshape the whole industry.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Absolutely.
Now, the IRA is a huge external factor.
Yeah.
But how about competition? I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is so competitive.
It is.
How are they staying ahead?
Yeah. So while they didn't really, kind of call out any specific competitors on this call,
Okay.
it's important to remember that, the markets for some of their leading drugs,
Uh-huh.
like Ajovy for migraines, are incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
So Teva really needs to constantly innovate and differentiate itself
Right.
to keep that market share.
Yeah, it's not just about bringing a drug to market,
That's
right?
what
It's
I'm
about,
saying.
convincing doctors and patients that their product is the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that requires a lot of R&D, effective marketing, and sales strategies.
Full machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Complacency is not an option in this industry.
So we've explored some of the external challenges, but how about internal risks?
Yeah.
Potential pitfalls. What should investors be watching out for as they evaluate Teva?
Right. So one of the things that came up actually during the Q&A portion of the call was the potential impact of Revlimid's patent expiration in 2026.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big revenue generator for them.
It is.
And losing that exclusivity is going to, leave a hole
Yeah, a pretty big hole.
in their earnings.
Yeah.
How are they planning to offset that?
So they basically outlined a multi-pronged approach,
Okay.
which includes accelerating the launches of their upcoming complex generics and biosimilars.
Right.
They also highlighted, the anticipated continued growth of Austedo and the potential contributions from some of their newer products like olanzapine.
So it sounds like they're not,
Right.
panicking over this patent cliff.
Yeah.
They're kind of using it as an opportunity to.
Right. To really showcase that diverse portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. To show that they can adapt
Absolutely.
to a changing market. But, we also can't talk about Teva
Right.
without acknowledging all the legal and regulatory scrutiny they faced, over the past few years. Opioid litigation,
Right.
other legal challenges. What was their stance on those issues during the call?
So they didn't get into the specifics of any, ongoing legal cases, but they did emphasize their commitment to ethical business practices
Okay.
and regulatory compliance.
Right.
They also mentioned their efforts
Uh-huh.
to resolve these legacy legal issues,
Okay.
allowing them to kind of move forward with their growth strategy.
So it sounds like they're trying to put these past issues behind them.
Right.
And focus on the future.
Absolutely.
Now, before we move on to our This Is Not Financial Advice segment,
Right.
where we'll kind of brainstorm
Yeah.
a little bit,
To have some fun.
I want to go back to Duvakitug for a second. This drug has blockbuster potential, but their ambitions seem to go way beyond those initial indications.
Right. Yeah. It's not just about treating one single disease, right? It's
Yes.
about targeting
Yeah.
this fundamental pathway
Uh-huh.
that plays a role in so many inflammatory conditions.
Yeah, it's almost like they've found this master key
Exactly.
that can unlock all these different treatments.
It's a really bold and ambitious vision, and it remains to be seen how this all plays out.
Right.
But if they can successfully develop this drug
Mm-hmm.
for these expanded indications,
Uh-huh.
I mean, the revenue potential is just enormous.
Not to mention the potential to help so many people
Right.
who are suffering from these conditions.
Exactly.
It's really stories like this that remind us why we do this.
Yeah.
It's not just about numbers.
Right.
It's about the potential to make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
shall we shift gears a little bit?
Yes. Let's have some fun.
It's time for our favorite segment. This is not financial advice. Haha, yes.
Where we kind of throw caution to the wind and explore some, maybe outrageous
Yeah.
but plausible trade ideas.
Based on what we're seeing from Teva.
Exactly.
And just to be clear, we are not financial advisors.
Right.
So do not take this.
This is purely hypothetical.
Yeah, this is just for fun.
Yeah. For entertainment purposes only.
Okay, disclaimer out of the way. What is your crazy trade idea for Teva?
Okay, so here's the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine Teva flawlessly navigates
Okay.
the hurdles presented by the IRA.
So they managed to, minimize the impact
Right.
on their key drugs.
Right.
And maybe even find some opportunities
Right, yeah.
within the new pricing landscape.
Exactly.
Oh.
And at the same time, their clinical trials for Duvakitug,
Uh-huh.
those expanded indications,
Mm-hmm.
yield groundbreaking results.
Okay.
We're talking like game-changing data that revolutionizes treatment.
Okay, so this is like, a once-in-a-decade kind of breakthrough.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And to top it all off,
Yeah.
their generics and biosimilars businesses continue to exceed expectations.
Okay.
They're launching new products, capturing market share.
So basically everything's coming up, Teva.
Everything is coming up, Teva.
Right.
So what's the play here?
Yeah, how do we capitalize on this perfect storm?
So the play is a long-term LIP call option
Okay.
on Teva stock with a strike price, significantly above its current trading level.
Maybe hold on, LAP. For those who aren't options traders,
Right.
What are we talking about?
So LAMP stands for long-term equity anticipation security.
Okay.
It's basically a call option. So that gives you the right to buy a stock
Mm-hmm.
at a specific price, the strike price,
Yep.
by a certain date,
Okay.
but with an expiration date
Uh-huh.
that's much further out than your standard option. We're talking options that expire a year.
Okay, so this is like a long-term bet
Yeah, long-term bet.
that Teva is going to take off. But why LAT specifically? Right, so we're essentially betting that the market is undervaluing
Okay.
Teva's long-term growth potential right now.
Right.
With the IRA being such a new factor. And Duvakitug's full potential is still kind of unknown.
Yeah.
They haven't really priced those things in yet. And Teva give us more time for these catalysts to play out.
Okay, got it. So
Yeah.
we're basically saying that by the time these options expire, the market will have recognized Teva's true value and their stock price will have climbed
Right.
way above that strike price,
Yeah.
allowing us to buy it at a discount and sell it for a big profit.
Exactly.
High risk, high reward.
High risk, high reward, yes.
What makes it fun?
But again, this is purely hypothetical.
Yes, yes. Not financial advice.
Do not run out and buy these options.
Don't do that. Do your research. Talk to a financial advisor.
Absolutely.
Okay. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Yeah,
But, this is a bold move, right?
it is.
You're betting that everything goes perfectly for Teva.
It is a gamble, but a calculated one. We're basing this on
Yeah.
our assessment of their, current trajectory
Mm-hmm.
and their future potential.
Right.
We're not just, pulling this out of thin air.
So just to recap, this is not financial advice trade idea.
Right.
We're buying these long-term LEP call options on Teva
Right.
with the conviction that they're going to navigate the IRA.
Right.
Duvakitug's going to be a success.
Mm-hmm.
And the generics and biosimilars businesses will continue to do well.
Exactly.
And that's going to push the stock price way up.
Again, folks, hypotheticals.
Yes, yes.
Not financial advice.
We're just two guys
Right.
who love talking about stocks.
And this trade idea,
Yeah.
well, it is more of a thought experiment. It
Right.
really highlights the possibilities that exist
Mhm.
when you start thinking outside the box.
It's the what if scenarios
Exactly.
that make investing so interesting.
Right. The market is full of surprises. It's our job to try to anticipate those.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground
We have, yes.
in this deep dive into Teva's Q4 2024 earnings call.
Mm-hmm.
We've analyzed their performance, their pipeline.
Yep.
Explored the challenges, the opportunities.
Yep.
And even come up with this, crazy trade idea.
We've really tried to give you that 360-degree view of Teva. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you've come away with a much deeper understanding of their business and where they could be headed.
Before we wrap up,
Yes.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Teva is, very clearly in this period of transition. They're really trying to shed this image of being just a generics company.
Yeah.
And really embrace this new identity as an innovator. But can they actually pull it off?
That is the billion-dollar question.
Right. Can they really overcome those challenges and emerge as a leader?
Yeah.
Only time will tell. But it's definitely going to be an interesting journey to watch.
It really is.
So buckle up, folks. The next chapter in Teva's story is going to be exciting.
Thanks for joining us on Talk Tickers.
Until next time. Okay, so we've been, pretty optimistic about Teva.
Yeah.
But, got to put on our skeptical hats for a minute.
Right. Always two sides to the story.
Well, there's another side to the story, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's play devil's advocate.
Okay.
What are some of the things that could go wrong?
Yeah.
What could derail their success? What should investors be kind of, on the lookout for?
Well, for starters, let's just talk about their R&D spending. They're pouring a ton of money into Duvakitug.
Yeah.
And their other pipeline programs.
Uh-huh.
But drug development is risky.
It is.
No guarantees that those investments are going to pay off.
What if those clinical trials, hit a snag?
Right.
Or, what if the results aren't what they're hoping for?
Right. And it's not just about Duvakitug. They can't just bet on one drug.
Right.
They need a diversified pipeline, multiple shots on goal.
Yeah, exactly. What if some of those other promising candidates, don't work out?
Exactly. It could be a real setback.
Yeah.
And even if the drugs themselves are successful, there's the issue of execution, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot on their plate right now. Launching new products, managing costs, dealing with the IRA, integrating their recent acquisitions. Can they actually juggle all those things?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to have a great plan.
Right.
But you got to be able to put it into action.
Exactly. And their track record on execution hasn't always been perfect.
They've had some stumbles.
Yeah, they have.
They need to show investors that, they've learned from those mistakes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so execution risk is one thing to watch out for. What else?
So another potential pitfall is just the competitive landscape.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry is constantly evolving. New competitors are popping up. Existing players are getting more aggressive.
Especially with biosimilars.
Yeah.
I mean, Teva's betting big on that market, but they're not alone.
Absolutely not. No, they're going to face some stiff competition. Everyone wants a piece of that pie.
So how do they, I guess, make sure they stand out?
Right. Well, their biosimilars, need to stand out, not just on price.
Right.
But quality and effectiveness.
Yeah.
They need to build those relationships with healthcare providers and payers.
And they can't afford to just, rest on their laurels. They need to keep innovating.
Absolutely.
Because that market's only going to get more crowded.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, we talked about it a little bit before, but we can't forget about the patent cliff for Revlimid in 2026.
That's a big one.
That's a big one, yeah.
And I know they talked about their strategy, but it's still an unknown right.
Yeah.
What if they can't make up for that lost revenue?
Right.
With new product launches?
Right. What if it's not enough? And then there's, the ongoing legal and regulatory challenges.
Yeah.
While they are trying to move past those issues, there's always that risk of new headaches popping up.
Right, because the pharmaceutical industry is so heavily regulated.
Right.
It seems like there's always something.
Right, exactly, yeah.
That can lead to big legal expenses.
Yeah, and then you can't forget about the broader macroeconomic environment.
Yeah.
We're in a really uncertain time right now. Inflation is still a concern. Interest rates are rising. And that could impact Teva. Their borrowing costs could go up.
Yeah.
It could be tougher to invest.
And what if there's a recession?
Right. Yeah.
Demand for pharmaceuticals.
Things could change pretty quickly.
Yeah, it could take a hit. So, while Teva's recent performance and their potential are really encouraging, investors need to be aware of those risks.
It's all about, weighing the potential rewards against the risk.
Exactly.
And every investor has a different, risk tolerance.
Absolutely. So as always, Do your research.
Talk to your financial advisor.
Talk to your financial advisor.
Make informed decisions.
Make informed decisions, yes.
Yeah.
We're not here to tell anyone what to do.
Right.
We're just trying to...
Just have a conversation.
Yeah, have a conversation and provide some insight.
Exactly.
Just two guys who love talking about stocks.
Exactly.
But hopefully you enjoyed this deep dive into Teva's latest earnings.
Yeah.
We covered a lot.
Yeah.
From financials to pipeline, to the challenges,
Risks.
the opportunity.
The opportunities, yeah.
It's a really interesting company at, I think, a really important point in their history.
Yeah, they're trying to, reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
Become an innovator.
Whether they pull it off, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
But it's definitely going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all the time we have.
Thanks for joining us on Talk Tickers.
Until next time.